What's up with everybody? It's your man Mario B.
Hi, Nicole.
We're back at it with some more reaction videos. So yeah, we're checking out the Falklands MiniWars #1 about oversimplified. We definitely enjoy his stuff. Like I said, this is the first video.
Yeah.
I think this is the first ever video
this
ever
is
made.
his first one?
No, I don't think so. This is the first
okay.
of the series. Cause I think he got like 3 MiniWars.
Gotcha.
So yeah, man, we're gonna dive right into it.
Alrighty.
Hi, English Mariner John Strong. Hi, Anthony Carey, 5th Viscount of Falkland. I would very much like for you to go to Chile and locate the wreck of a Spanish treasure ship for me. Okay. Hey, I found some islands. The English were probably not the first to discover the Falklands, but they were the first to write it down. They found it to be cold, wet, and miserable, just like home. So they established a colony in 1765, unaware that the French had also discovered the islands and done the same a year earlier. And for a while the two were unaware of each other's existence, until presumably there was an awkward moment where they ran into each other. Then the Spanish showed up and told the French that a couple hundred years earlier the Pope drew a line on a map and said all of this belongs to Portugal and all of this belongs to Spain, and that the island was in Spain's territory and they would like the French to hand over their settlement. Now since the two were good friends and Spain was willing to pay in cash money, the French obliged. But since they were still a little bitter about the recent 7 Years' War thing, they made sure to warn the Spanish not to let those dirty English on the other side of the island take over. So Spain went over to the English and explained, Pope, line on map, Spain's island. And the English said, yeah, right, this is our island. But the Spanish had more guns, so they kicked them off anyway. But then England threatened to go to war. So Spain went to their friends in France and said, hey, it looks like stuff is about to go down. You in on this? And the French Minister of War said, yeah, and we'll launch a full-scale invasion of England and party like it's 1066. But then King Louis XV said, 1, you're insane, and 2, you're fired. Sorry, Spain, we're not ready for a war right now. So Spain had to give the English their settlement back, saying it's still our island, and the English said, no, it's our island. Then some colonists in North America got a bit rowdy, so the English had to leave their settlement to go focus on that. But they left behind a plaque that said this is totally still our island. So the island was in Spanish hands, but then a French guy, no, not that one, turned on the Spanish, took over most of the country, and captured King Ferdinand VII. And in response, the Spanish colonies in South America started vying for independence. So Spain had a little bit on its hands and also had to leave the islands. And for a couple decades, the islands were left uninhabited except for the penguins, some fishermen, and the gauchos, which are basically like cowboys but cooler and Spanisher. A merchant from Hamburg living in the now independent United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata heard about the feral cattle roaming the Falklands and thought it would be a good way to make some money. So he got permission from both Buenos Aires and the British government to set up trade there as a private venture. Some American ships came down and began hunting whales and seals around the islands, and Verney wasn't too happy about it. So he asked Buenos Aires for some military assistance in defending the islands, but Buenos Aires said, meh, do it yourself, gave him some weapons, and appointed him governor of the islands. So he seized the US ships and arrested their crews. In response, 2 things happened. First, America came down and said, nice settlement you have there, would be a shame if someone destroyed it. And then they destroyed it. Second, Britain heard Verney had been appointed governor, meaning the United Provinces, actually now the Argentine Confederation, were officially claiming the islands as theirs. So Britain showed up and said, hey, didn't you see our plaque? And since they had more guns, they kicked them off the island. And the Falklands remained firmly in British hands for the next century. They officially became a crown colony in 1840. Port Stanley became the island's capital in 1845. The cattle hides from the island weren't worth much, so they imported sheep from Britain in 1851. 2 world wars came and went, and all this time the Argentinians never rescinded their claim over the islands. Now it's 1976, and after a couple civil wars, a new brutal military dictatorship sponsored by the US fight against communism has taken control in Argentina. And by 1981, this guy was in power. The economy had been struggling for a long time, and Galtieri had been unable to improve the situation. Now if you ever find yourself the brutal military leader of a struggling South American country and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Start a war to distract everyone from their misery. Galtieri knew how popular he would be if he could finally take back Argentina's last Malvinas from the occupying British. There had been proposals to cut British military spending, and the ice patrol vessel HMS Endurance had been withdrawn from the area. So the Argentinians assumed the British may not even bother doing anything about the invasion. After easily capturing the largely uninhabited South Georgia island, 600 Argentine troops were sent to the Falklands. The small number of Royal Marines and other British forces stationed there put up a small amount of resistance, but in the end had to surrender to the larger Argentine force. Crowds in Argentina celebrated the news, but they were wrong to assume the British would do nothing, because the person in charge of the United Kingdom at the time was this lady. Thatcher was a somewhat controversial prime minister, but whether you loved her or hated her, there was no denying that she was tough, like metal. Iron, for example. She immediately declared an exclusion zone around the islands and organized for a task force of over 100 ships to set sail for the Falklands. The United Nations expressed concern at the Argentine invasion. All South American nations apart from Chile backed Argentina. And since the United States had propped up the Argentine dictatorship, Reagan went to Thatcher and said, "Could you maybe just let them have the islands?" And Thatcher said no. Okay, here, have some weapons. Fighting a war over 8,000 miles from home was a logistical challenge for the British. They requisitioned civilian cruise ships and containers, and they used British-owned Ascension Island as a forward base. By the time they arrived at the Falklands in May, the Argentine forces had had time to entrench themselves. The first task for the British was to gain control of the seas, which they did easily. On the 2nd of May, a British submarine sank an Argentine cruiser. The sinking was controversial, as it occurred outside the British exclusion zone. It was also the largest loss of life in a single incident during the war.
Dang.
And in response, the Argentine Navy withdrew from the islands. The next task for the British was to gain air superiority. While the Argentine Air Force controlled the skies, they were able to inflict considerable damage on the Royal Navy below. Days after the sinking of the General Belgrano, 2 Argentine super-étendards carried out a raid on the HMS Sheffield and sank it with an Exocet missile. For weeks, the Argentine Air Force would continue to carry out raids and inflict heavy casualties on the Royal Navy, with British Sea Harriers doing their best to take out as many of the Argentine aircraft as they could. While the battle in the skies raged on, San Carlos was chosen as the best landing site for the British ground forces. An SAS raid took out Argentine defenses on Pebble Island, and the HMS Alacrity sailed through Falklands Sound to flush out any Argentine supply ships. The landings began on May 21st, with Argentine aircraft carrying out full-scale raids on the task force ships taking part in the landing, damaging several and sinking a few. But anti-aircraft cannons and Sea Harriers shot down many of the aircraft in what became a major turning point for air superiority, and a beachhead was successfully formed. Then the ground troops began their movements out of San Carlos, across the north towards Stanley, and south toward the Argentine stronghold at Goose Green. In the following battles, a clear trend emerged. The Argentine conscripts put up a good fight, and with the rough, muddy terrain, the war was by no means easy for the British. But with highly skilled Royal Marine commanders and parachute regiment troops, the British would often find themselves taking on larger numbers of Argentinian soldiers, but would still come out victorious with minimal casualties. The 14-hour-long battle for Goose Green commenced on the night of May 28th. The battle ended in a decisive British victory, with over 900 Argentinians surrendering. Then, with 5,000 reinforcements arriving from the 5th Infantry Brigade, the British started preparing for their final assault on Stanley. In a series of hard-fought battles, they took control of the hills and mountains surrounding the town, as the Argentine forces withdrew with British ships shelling their positions from offshore. Utterly surrounded, on the 14th of June, the Argentinians surrendered, and the war was over. The 2-month-long war claimed hundreds of lives and left the islands strewn with minefields that still pose a problem to this day. Argentina still claims the islands, but in 2013 a referendum was held, and the islanders voted 99.8% in favor of remaining British. Plus, oil was just found near the islands, so the British probably aren't going to give them up anytime soon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Why the Argentinians let them still vote for the British to have it. Maybe they just don't want to like fight over it.
Yeah, maybe it's tired of winning the war over it.
Now that there's oil, they would maybe change their mind. But
yeah, because there's a lot of money in oil. A lot of money. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's crazy, man. It just, man, somebody, and I think it was like 1,500 people died. Injured. It was one of them.
Well, for Argentina, it was 1,500 were injured, and it was like 900 died or something.
They've been fighting over there for like centuries then. That
Falklands?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think it's a more recent find and then fighting, yes.
Yeah, first,
but
the Spanish got to
just
they
shows
got
that,
to
like, it's like war is just everywhere, forever, always.
It's like
different countries are fighting different things, and it's crazy.
It's like we can't even go now, like, not even 100 years without no wars, man. That's what it seems like.
It's sickening almost.
Yeah, man. It's like so many people dying, and it's like in each country gonna look at themselves as the good guys.
Right, I know.
No, we live in America. America think everything they do, we do the good guys. But if you was raised in the UK, born in the UK, you gonna see no really good guys. If you was born in Spain, no really good guys. So it's kind of hard to know who are truly the good guys, who truly started the wars, because each country is gonna say their story with
each country has their own
story.
Yeah, and they have their own agenda and their own thing that they want.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to pick out who's right and who's wrong. Yeah.
Like I said, if you're born in America, you probably still get yourself as a patriot. Like, no, we never started. Their started. We're the right ones. So it's like every country does it. So it's hard to tell who's really telling the truth.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't really know. The only God knows.
I definitely didn't know about this war over the Falklands.
Yeah, me
Not
neither.
that I would. I mean, there's so many islands and things that different countries have taken over that it's hard to know all of them. So that was an interesting one. It was new for me.
Yeah, all because people want some land, people want power, people want control. And man, it's funny because I guess in Britain, it's like so far over, and they travel all the way to get like a land. Say this is our land.
I mean, I think we've watched something before where it's like the Brit, and I'm not Russian British, but the British really have like tried to conquer a lot of the like around the world. You know what I mean? Like
European colonization.
They explored. I think part of it was just because they would send out people and explore and find things and then claim it. But really, there were already people like here in America. There were already people there. Like in the Falklands, there were probably already Argentinians living down there. So
instead of just like okay, your land.
They would claim it because they wanted to take over. Like
you don't got enough military weapons. Right. We got the advanced military weapons, so we're gonna take it from you guys. Versus like, okay, we're gonna leave you guys alone.
Like we had to conquer everything. Like they had
that's crazy. I wish people could just leave people alone, man. Mm-hmm. You know. I mean, I see if you want to go there, you want to help people, but it's like trying to just take their stuff.
It's one thing to explore and learn from other people.
Yeah, learn from other like cultures and
like maybe they would have even like some areas were probably welcome. Sure, you can come over here. Like I don't care, but trying to take over and like change their way of life, like that's what. Why do we need to do that?
Well, like I said, it brings us back when we were talking like a couple of videos ago about if you had one like superpower country had like. Let's say 300 years from now, they're going to have way more advanced technology. If one country had that technology right now, they'd try to rule the world.
Right.
That's what they would do. I think any country would try to do that. They'd try to bully and rule the world. Well, we so much more advanced, better training, better this. You guys can compete, Mm-hmm. You have one country try to take over the whole entire world, man. And then you have to submit to their culture,
and
their
way of life.
I think
we do have a couple that want to or have had one. I mean, I think that's kind of what people have feared with Russia in the past and things like that. So
man,
not necessary.
Yeah, but this was definitely another good video.
Yeah, good one. I liked it.
Oversimplified, definitely makes some great content. Plan on checking out more stuff, but we about to go to end this video. You want to support our channel? Check out our pinned comment and leave your video requests by clicking on the link to Streamlabs. Check out the link. Click on the link. Leave your video requests, and we have your video up between 3 to 4 days. Don't forget to subscribe.
Yep, thumbs it up.
Turn on notification. It's your man Mario B.
And Nicole.
We'll catch you next. Awesome. Peace and love, baby.